easing off throughout the day as well. As we head into Wednesday, there is a more persistent band of rain that will be sweeping its way across the UK. Then into Thursday, the showers return once again. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top story tonight, Boris Johnson has urged Israel's allies to stay the course in their support for Israel in its war against Hamas. The former Prime Minister toured some of the communities attacked by terrorists on the 7th of October. In an exclusive interview with our security editor Mark White, he said he was horrified by what he saw and called on the international community to remember those events.
Look at what happened. Remember, this was sadism. This was an orgy of brutality and torture against innocent people. People were chased around the rooms in their houses and shot. Now, there's a difference between that and what the Israeli soldiers are now trying to do in Gaza. So your point, Mark, about what the international community needs to remember is the difference between what Israel experienced, the terrorist attack, and what they're trying to do now. What they're trying to do now is make sure that never happens again.
And you can see more of that exclusive interview with Boris Johnson tomorrow from breakfast at 6 and throughout the day on GB News. Now, Humza Yousaf's in-laws have arrived back in Scotland after being trapped in Gaza for more than 3 weeks. The First Minister posted a photo on X and said he's glad they're back home safely. The Foreign Office is pressing for the Rafah crossing to reopen to allow UK nationals to escape Gaza. Egypt announced the suspension of evacuations following a deadly attack on an ambulance. Well, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Home Secretary Suella Braverman have expressed concerns about further pro-Palestine protests during Armistice Day. The Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has promised to take a robust approach and to use all the powers available to ensure commemorative events are not undermined. Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden says Armistice Day should be about honouring the sacrifices made by previous generations.
I have really grave concerns about this, and I think that certainly representing a large Jewish community as I do, but it's broader than the Jewish community. We should be honouring and respecting the sacrifice made by previous generations, and you certainly shouldn't have the kind of intimidation that you see in those marches.
And Thames Water has declared a major incident as thousands of homes in Godalming in Surrey have been left without water due to the effects of Storm Ciarán. The bad weather conditions have caused issues at Shalford Water Treatment Works. Thames Water saying that they're working to restore supplies to the area. In the meantime, they're providing bottled water, but GB News understands some stores locally have started to sell out as residents go to buy their own. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now, let's get straight to Free Speech Nation.
A pro-Palestine protest is scheduled for Armistice Day. Marks & Spencer upset everyone with a Christmas advert, and The Simpsons ditches one of its most famous jokes. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and we'll be covering some of the usual antics from those culture warriors who have really outdone themselves this week, even by their own demented standards. Coming up on the show tonight, feminist writer, filmmaker and activist Vaishnavi Sundar will be here to discuss her upcoming documentary Behind the Looking Glass. We'll discuss a worrying case in which a trans police officer hounded a free speech campaigner with abusive messages before eventually being dismissed last week. Freedom in the Arts. That's a new organisation designed to help artists who find themselves and their work cancelled. Well, I'm going to be speaking to one of the co-founders, Rosie Kay, and the campaigner Billboard Chris will be here to tell us about his work travelling the world, exposing gender identity ideology. And of course, I've got a wonderful panel here who are going to answer some questions from our rather attractive studio audience. My guests tonight are Cressida Wetton and Josh Howie. Welcome both. So I like the contrast between you two because you've dressed up for the event and you've gone kind of ghetto.
I've got...
I mean, look at that.
I represent the street.
I've always thought that about you.
There's in the poshest voice possible.
And you look very well turned out.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.
How dare you? Yeah.
No, that's all there is to say about that. Let's talk to the audience instead, because I'm bored of my panel already. We've got a question from Edward. Where's Edward? Hi, Edward.
Are white supremacists to blame for Palestinian deaths?
OK, so that's quite a heavy start to the show. But I know what this is about, Edward. This is women's organisation Sisters Uncut. Now, they are claiming that the same white supremacist patriarchy oppressing feminists is also, quote, murdering Palestinians. Josh, this is one of these, you would describe them as intersectional groups that sort of find these connections all over the place, sort of lump it together in a very unnuanced way, don't they?
The idea is that, until we're all... Nobody's free until we're all free.
Right.
So they're banding together trans ideology, which includes, I guess, queer, gay people, obviously, and women as well.
Yes.
And they're banning that with the Palestinian cause. And the irony is, of course, that in a place like Gaza, with Hamas, a terrorist organisation, an Islamic terrorist organisation, all of those things would be, banned. They would be murdered for. So I mean, it's ridiculous. And the other thing is, when they say white supremacy or whatever, it's an American idea that they've tried to transpose across the world. Israel, it doesn't apply to. The majority of Israeli Jews are from the Middle East, and they look like Palestinians. So it's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, so it's like you say, the Americanism, I think, is exactly right. But this is a group that have gathered in London quite a lot to sort of put this together. But this group have already got in trouble before, haven't they, Cressida?
Well, they're very... I mean, first of all, when you hear the name, feminism... What's it? Feminists Uncut? Sisters Uncut. Don't you think it was an FGM charity? Excellent. Well done then. And then it turns out it's not that at all. They've got all these other things, as you've just said, grouped together.
Well, they actually defended that trans activist who called on people to punch women. Right? They defended that.
Isn't it? I mean, the standard feminist now is currently saying, let's have women's prisons be women only.
Yes.
So it's quite a departure from that.
It sort of disturbs me with all of these protests that I've seen. A lot of the people seem to be reducing everything to very simplistic binary narratives, and it looks to me like a lot of them just don't understand the issues, not even a little bit.
No, not at all. And they're absolutely unwilling to learn. And once they feel like they're comfortable in their space on the right side of history, God forbid someone comes along and says, well, what about this fact?
So why is that? Because this seems to be the case with every political or ideological dispute these days. Everything. It has to be reduced to good versus evil, and there's nothing in between.
Because my theory is that the left or the far left don't like reading.
But maybe.
No, I genuinely think that. I think they don't like reading. I think they're lazy. I think they just want someone to tell them, you're good.
Yes.
And just like with the trans thing, like this, you see the same pattern repeated over and over again. Everybody goes, yeah, of course we want equal rights for everybody, and of course everything should be fair. And we go, yeah, great. Then they stop thinking because they've made their position and that. But as soon as someone says, well, actually, that might equate to, female rights might be affected. And then in this case, they're meant to be a feminist organisation. Well, guess who got raped and murdered on October 7th in Israel?
Exactly. I find this all the time. I had Andrew Boff on the show, and he was talking about gender identity ideology, saying it wasn't a thing. And I explained to him what he's meant by the phrase, and he had never heard it before. He clearly didn't know the first thing about it. And I was genuinely surprised by it.
He doesn't watch Free Speech Nation.
He doesn't watch Free Speech Nation. That's the most egregious aspect of that story. But, I don't mind people disagreeing, but I'm always shocked when people haven't done some basic reading on the subject. Done
any basic reading and then be so confident that you start an organisation. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Well, that's it, absolutely. OK, we'll move on to another question now from Roderick. Roderick, hello.
Hello. Why is The Simpsons retiring one of its best gags?
Yes. Now, are you a fan of The Simpsons, Roderick?
Yes.
You are. And
the early Simpsons more than late.
No, I totally agree with you, because the late Simpsons, they have lost it, haven't they? But in the early days, Homer used to grab Bart by the throat. He used to say, why are you little? And grab the child by the throat. And I never took that as inciting violence against children. I mean, I don't know, you've got children.
I mean, look, the joke was he was a bad parent.
Right, there we go.
Like the clip now, he sort of says, I'm not like that anymore. Well, the point was, when it came out 30 years ago, people weren't just strangling their kids. The point was, he was a terrible parent, and that was the joke. And he says, things have changed now. You know what's changed is the ability to make a joke about bad parenting.
Yeah.
That's what's changed, and that's the saddest thing.
I mean, there's all sorts of ways that the Simpsons has sort of cleaned its act up, sanitised its act according to modern sensibilities.
And become not funny.
They got rid of the character Apu, for instance. They've done all sorts of stuff.
But look at South Park, which is just absolutely killing it still.
Yes.
Being totally relevant. This week had a genius episode which just totally blew woke ideology out of the water.
Yes.
They've always been on it.
They had a good... Yes,
and
South
they don't
Park...
try to answer the questions, do they? They always say that we're here to hold up a mirror.
Yeah.
Not to tell you what to do.
Yes, exactly.
We won't tell you not to strangle your kids.
But was anyone seriously thinking that was risky to have Homer strangle his kid?
I hope they weren't. I don't think anybody copied Marge's hair either.
No.
I don't know.
They probably should have.
Well, actually, having said that, blue hair's in now,
It's a good look.
Yeah.
It's a good... But, Roderick makes the point that the early Simpsons are much better, and it's true. They've kind of just lost it, haven't they?
Yeah, maybe it's time to...
Just retire the whole show.
That's quite a violent thing to say.
Seems quite extreme, but yeah, fair enough. OK, we're going to move on to a question from Alan. Where is Alan? Hi, Alan.
Hi there.
Are we winning the battle against cancel culture in universities?
Yeah, this is a story this week. 100 academics at British universities. They formed a new council for academic freedom. And the idea here is they're going to combat cancel culture. Now, I was speaking to Greg Lukianov recently, who's written a really good book with Ricky Schlott about the problems of cancel culture, particularly in universities. And he makes the point, they both make the point in the book, that you'd have to go back to McCarthyism to have anything as bad as the number of professors getting fired at the moment on university campuses in the US. And in fact, their research has shown that more professors have been fired within this woke era than during McCarthyism. People don't believe that, but it's true. So that's a worry, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I look forward to reading that book when it comes out in, like, comic book format.
Yeah, exactly. But, we haven't read my book yet, so...
I'm waiting for the comic book. As soon as the comic book's out. But, yes, and this is... I actually think this ties into a much larger picture of our society, where we see people... where we see these marches going on. I know we're going to talk about that in a bit. But... it's because the far-left woke ideology, whatever you want to call it, identity politics, hasn't been properly challenged because people have been afraid, and the people who have stood up have lost their jobs.
They have,
but that's why they've been able to rise to such prominence and go unchecked.
Yes.
And I believe the next step now to just... for getting ourselves out of this quagmire that we find ourselves in the West is having this robust ability to challenge those ideologies and to show them to be incredibly stupid.
Well, this is the point. I mean, I hear really offensive opinions all the time, sometimes directed at me. I never think to myself, I want that person fired. I want that person to shut up. I'd rather expose that person's stupid arguments for what they are. I mean, rather than give them a kind of dignity, you know, by silencing them.
Absolutely,
I mean, it's weird, isn't it?
Oh, take the floor more, please.
Right,
carry on.
Completely, completely.
Save me a job having to explain why you frustrate me. Just carry on.
But, I mean, how do we get to this point? Because now in universities, it is this case, all of the studies show this, that there's a kind of a groupthink going on, and that actually people who have more traditionally conservative views, they tend to keep them to themselves because they say they won't get promoted if they even... I mean, that's hot for university. What's going on?
It's terrible, isn't it? I mean, it's 20 years since I was at university, and we just didn't... I don't remember it being like that at all. I read philosophy, had a good time. We used to kick an idea around. Nobody panicked if it went into a dark corner. That was... And you have to go into the dark corners to find out where your limits are, don't you?
Absolutely.
If you don't have that opportunity to thrash ideas out, you never...
You know what? You're making me feel bad that I didn't go to any of my lectures.
Well, you should feel bad, Josh. And maybe if you did work a bit harder, you'd have read my book by now.
Yeah.
You'd have developed the skills.
I had such a good time.
Well, OK, we're going to move on to a question from Jonathan. Where's Jonathan? Hi, Jonathan.
Hello. Should France ban gender-inclusive language?
Yeah, this was interesting. The French Senate voted in favour of a new proposed law, which is to ban gender-inclusive language from official communications in France. That's the idea. And they say, and I know Macron has made this point a lot, that he's worried about French culture being disrupted by woke ideology. And this is a good example because they're having to force in language that isn't natural. In other words, the language hasn't evolved. There are activists trying to impose changes to the language, and that's the difference, isn't it?
That is the difference, and if you read some of the examples, it's like it just makes no sense. They've added these like dot to make the feminine at the end of masculine words. Is the idea of it. But what's also interesting in the grander scheme here is that you've still seen what happened here, where Suella Braverman, who I'm not always a big fan of, but she has tried to implement these policies and told, like, the police to stop, following through on some of the stuff that they've been doing, and then they haven't done it. And it's the same thing in France. Like, a couple of years ago, they said, stop doing it.
Yes.
And it didn't stop. So now they've literally had to make it law, and it seems like that's the only way to really fight this stuff, is to take it to that level.
I mean, what do you think about this, Cressida? Because, I mean, this idea of activists trying to change the language that we use, and they do it all the time. And the trouble is that the media in this country takes it on board. Have you tried recently reading an article about the singer Sam Smith? Because most articles will use they, them pronouns, and by the time you get to the second paragraph, it doesn't make any sense anymore. I'm like, what, are they talking about the audience now? They do this, they're talking about who are they talking about now? And everyone knows this. Everyone knows it's incoherent, and no one speaks like that. It just hasn't caught on.
Do you know who doesn't know? I was absolutely crushed this week. I saw a clip of Miriam Margolyes saying this on Graham Norton. I don't know how old the clip was, but she was saying, now, what harm does it do? And I was thinking, no, we know it does harm.
Well, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It's verging on compelled speech. But
this is the problem, you see, because if the language naturally evolves so that the word they becomes a singular pronoun, then whatever, I would accept that. But it really hasn't, and the vast majority of people just can't get on board with it, but they're still trying to impose it.
They're trying to impose it, and it doesn't make logical sense.
No.
So it's actually creating extra steps, making it harder, and I think that Macron, he's thinking of all those poor GCSE students out there. And he's implemented.
What about people learning the language from abroad? I mean, it must be. It's a nightmare enough as it is.
Yeah, good luck.
It's un problème. Mais oui, bien sûr. Then we can all do that. All right, we're going to move on now to a question from Armin. Armin. Hiya.
Good evening. Do you think we should be able to trust Keir Starmer with his flip-flop backwards and forwards, and he can't even wear his poppy all the time?
Well, yes, I mean, he is known as a bit of a flip-flop, but this poppy issue... So I saw this online, and I wasn't sure whether to believe it or not, but there was an image of various Labour MPs doing speeches with their poppies on, and then that was juxtaposed with pictures of them doing speeches about Islam or Islamophobia, and the poppy wasn't there. And I couldn't decide, has that been, modified digitally, or is it the case that Starmer just forgot to wear his poppy? Go on. Cressida, you give me a look then, like I'm very naive.
I find that very hard to believe, Andrew.
Really?
I mean, they have thought... They're not Josh. They've given lots of thought to what they look like on these programmes. They've got experts advising them. No, come on.
No, well, it is the case that he says he forgot, right? He forgot to wear it during the...
Allegedly, yeah.
OK.
If it isn't the case, if it's a cynical ploy to win over the Muslim vote by not wearing a poppy, I think it's disgusting.
But why would that win over the Muslim vote?
I mean, that's that. There you have to ask.
Isn't that quite a prejudiced approach for him to take? If he's assuming that...
Or for his advisors or whatever, to assume that to not be down with the poppy, yeah, it's a ridiculous thing. If it's a genuine mistake and it's been blown up by the people who just want to attack Keir Starmer, then it's like...
Who knows?
I'm going to flip-flop on this one.
I know you are, because I think you do struggle, Josh, because you do want Labour to get in at the next election, but you're not sure about Starmer, are you?
No, I think it's almost the other way round. I actually think... I think Starmer is a clever person. I think he'll do anything to get in. And this is what I think has happened in the larger picture. Again, this is what I'm thinking in a very macro... I just learnt macro, by the way, the other day, so I'm trying to implement it as much as possible. But I think they've done the numbers and they've gone, we've got 4 million Muslim voters, or whatever, 90% of that. We don't want to alienate them. But at the same time, if we seem to be too much trying to appease that group, I think the majority will go, wait a minute.
Is it that calculated?
I think they've absolutely run the numbers, and they have thought we'll lose more viewers by... And forget the morality of it. Like, of course, when he put out a good position with Israel, he stood his ground, he hasn't sort of kowtowed, he hasn't flip-flopped because of the pressure that
he has on other issues.
He has on other issues, but on this he hasn't. And I think that's... I'm hoping that it's part morality, because it is the right thing for him to do.
Yes.
But I am also... I wouldn't be surprised if they don't run the numbers.
And to be fair to Keir Starmer, he has recently said that he admits that 99.9% of women don't have penises, which is a good step forward, because up until recently he was saying he couldn't answer that question.
I wish he'd been able to say it that succinctly, Andrew.
Well, actually, it's not. If you actually look at the maths of that, it still ends up with about 37,000 women with penises. It's a lot of penises.
He's trying to make himself go through every woman. He's just checking.
He's just checking, is he? OK, well, at least he's thorough. OK, we're going to move on now to a question from Dave. Where is Dave? Hi, Dave.
All right, yeah. Now and Then, is it a true Beatles song?
Yeah, I watched the video for Now and Then So this is a new Beatles track. Well, I say new. It's been they've taken like an old demo tape with John Lennon singing, cleaned it up digitally. Paul McCartney's added other bit. Anyway, let's have a look. We've got a little clip.
Now and then, I want you to be there for me.
So it's interesting what they do, because in the video they digitally bring in John Lennon and George Harrison, but they also bring in like old versions of Paul McCartney standing next to the new version of Paul McCartney, and all sorts of interesting... I actually quite like the song, and I think it's an interesting thing to do. I don't see... What do you think? I mean, I'm not a die-hard Beatles fan, so I don't...
No, I mean,
it
is interesting. I mean, whether some people would add it to their canon or not, but at the same time... every song that you hear is manipulated nowadays.
Right, exactly.
You're not hearing the 100% true voice of anybody really anymore.
No, I mean, every song is produced to a degree and sort of modified during the process. I mean, is it the case that people are annoyed about it? I didn't hear about that.
I don't know if they're not. I mean, he wrote it, didn't he? He was there before... They half finished the project and then he inconveniently died, and it's...
John Lennon's dead!
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, Josh.
Oh, man. I thought it was Ringo.
Anyway, but you're fine
Well,
with it.
yes, because he wrote it.
OK, because he did write it. OK, fine. Do we have any more questions? No, we don't, so we're going to take a break. But next up on Free Speech Nation, the feminist writer, filmmaker and activist Vaishnavi Sundar will be here to discuss her upcoming documentary, Behind the Looking Glass. Please don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best.
Bellissima.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Vaishnavi Sundar is a feminist, writer, activist and acclaimed filmmaker. Her upcoming project is a documentary called Behind the Looking Glass, which is about the lives of women whose partners have or want to transition. It's the first film ever made about this topic. Let's take a look.
Get out. Get yourself out of this.
Do not allow yourself to be persuaded or influenced by blandishments and manipulative arguments.
Try to extricate yourself, figure out the finances.
There's nothing you can be or do that will make you the object of his affection. He is the object of his affection.
It's like my dad died when I was 11, but I didn't realise. And I've been mourning him for 40 years.
And Vaishnavi Sundar joins me now. Thank you for joining me. A lot of people will see that and not understand the idea. Trans widows, what does that mean?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Trans widows basically is a term that was coined after a group of women decided that it was suitable to call themselves that because their husbands or their partners have decided to leave them to become a woman.
Yes, I understand.
They've evidently left their family behind, their children behind, and these women feel widowed.
Yes.
By their husbands.
And you've been speaking to a lot of these women for the new documentary, but not in India, elsewhere.
Yeah, I've been speaking to women, to anybody who would speak to me, to be honest.
Yes.
And the challenge about speaking on this subject in India is the language, because we speak hundreds of languages, and it is very difficult to unite women together for them to understand what trans widow means in the first place.
Yes.
And there are so many different socio-cultural communities that these women might not be coming forward to speak about this, and they probably don't think that they can speak about this. Divorces are being granted on the grounds of the husbands getting cross-sex surgeries.
Yes.
But that's not because they care for the women, but that's just because the court believes that he is no longer a man, therefore the marriage is not valid.
So that's very interesting, because I think a lot of people make the assumption that gender identity ideology has only really spread in the Anglosphere and that it's not really happening in many other countries. But you say, from India, from an Indian perspective, actually it really has taken hold there.
Things have taken hold and things are moving in a very fast direction for the worse, because now trans-identified males are directed towards female prisons, female-only prison estate. Men with their preferred gender identity are allowed to participate in any sports of their choice, and there are puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones as part of training manuals for teachers who teach primary school children in school.
And this is happening in India, because all of those things you've described are happening here, and we've discussed them a lot on the programme.
Yeah.
It's a surprise to me to hear that it's so widespread in India.
It is a surprise to a lot of people as well. Consider us being about 5 years behind you.
Right.
And with more people going through this process, maybe resisting it at some point would probably create some awareness amongst people.
Yes.
But within this demographic, right, you can imagine that these men, when they trans-identify, the wives and the children that these men leave behind have absolutely no voice. They have no voice here. They definitely don't have voice back home. And it is difficult for people to take this into consideration because you wouldn't hear about it. You wouldn't hear about general domestic violence cases in the first place. Nobody cares about what happens to the wife, even in the generic domestic violence, not the neo-domestic violence. We have about 470,000 pending cases in the Supreme Court, we heard, that is under Domestic Violence Act 2005. But now trans-identified males can claim recourse under this act, which is meant exclusively for females. And the Chief Justice of India considers male and female not to be absolute concepts.
Absolutely fascinating. So you've made this film, or are making this film. You're in the process of raising money to complete the film. But you yourself, an acclaimed filmmaker in India, you've done all this work, but you yourself have sort of been cancelled, haven't you, for taking an interest in this topic?
Yeah, it happened because I apparently wrote some tweets on my personal Twitter back when nobody was even, aware that I exist in the internet web sphere. But I basically made tweets about wanting safe spaces for women and how men shouldn't participate in women's sports. Absolutely basic stuff, boilerplate.
Fairly standard views?
Just standing up for women, classic feminism. But that was apparently absolutely horrible of me to say that. So there was a screening that was supposed to happen in New York by this organization called Police Project. And they cancelled it, I think, 2 or 3 days before it because of my transphobic views.
Right.
And they did not allow me an opportunity to speak about it. They did not get back to media persons who asked for comments. They just shut me out completely. And that drove me to finding out about how deep it is in India, actually. And I doubled down on my activism, to be honest, since then. It was as if they shut me down and I just came out screaming out of it.
Well, I mean, I hear a lot of stories from women who've been in that position where they've been accused of transphobia or hatred or bigotry or even fascism for even expressing a view or an interest in this area. But their response isn't to shut up. And I suppose that's the intended outcome, that it shuts people up, intimidates them, right?
Absolutely.
But not the case in your case.
Well, they tried, but because I am by principle, I don't like bullies and misogynists. I just don't like listening to them. And if they try to shut me down, I will only scream further.
Yes.
And I used to write for a lot of Indian media companies, but they've just stopped commissioning any gigs to me right now. My films used to be platformed in so many different places, but they don't even respond to my emails anymore. Well, that does not hinder my, promotion of the films and everything. What I have gained by losing these erstwhile friends is that I've gained a global sisterhood from around the world who have helped me to promote all my work. They champion all my work, and I'm truly grateful for that. It's as if this cancellation was the best thing that happened to me.
Really?
Yes.
That's very interesting. So do you think that the way through all of this, and a lot of people are in your position and are worried about speaking out, is it going to be global? Is it going to be a sort of network of people resisting?
Oh, trust me, people are afraid to speak out about this, even in India. That's why there are very few people challenging this ideology. They are against it in principle, but they can't put their name and their face out. Saying that they are standing against it. And these people could be, working in organizations that promote gender ideology in a way that insurance companies provide full coverage for all sorts of gender ideology surgeries like double mastectomy, hysterectomies, and everything. And they provide you paid holidays to recuperate from these surgeries and things like that. In American and British companies who have offices back home also have this culture of having gender-neutral toilets and things like that. So you have the first at case here. You can say you are being discriminated for having GC views. We don't have that back there. No. So I can't oppose to wanting to use, not wanting to use a mixed-sex toilet because that's
because here we've got the legislation behind it, but it's not there in India.
Not yet, no.
So what next for the film? You want to complete the film. What else do you have to do?
Oh, I want to finish this film and I want to screen it everywhere, and I want to scream at the top of my voice because they have to take into account the wives and children of these men, because you hear the stunning and brave stories of these men non-stop, every day, all day, in every channel, in India as well. The media has been hijacked, the academia has been hijacked, law and police have been hijacked. So if you want the voices of the wives and children to be taken seriously, I hope that this film would come in handy and you can say that there was a film that was made on this subject.
Well, if people want to donate to your film, the website is on the screen right now. Vaishnavi, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Andy.
And next on Free Speech Nation, we'll be discussing a worrying case in which a trans police officer hounded a free speech campaigner with abusive messages before eventually being dismissed. Don't go away. I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Can you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Cressida Wetton and Josh Howie, to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems, do email us at gbviews@gbnews.com and we will do our best to answer your problems. A trans police officer has been dismissed after calling free speech campaigner Harry Miller a woman beater and a Nazi. Over a period of 18 months, Lindsay Watson sent Miller, himself a former police officer, over 1,200 messages, abusing both him and his campaign group, Fair Cop. A police misconduct panel was told that Miller was the victim of this campaign because his views on gender identity were in direct contradiction to those of Watson. So here to discuss this case, I'm joined by barrister Sarah Phillimore. Hello, Sarah. Now, you've had a run-in with this police officer yourself, right? It sounds incredible, the idea that a serving police officer would be sending abuse, given the amount of time that the police spend tweeting saying, don't abuse anyone online because that could be an offence.
No, well, the whole story is incredible. About 18 months ago, Harry wrote to the Chief Constable of Leicester Police saying, you've got a problem, a member of your force is behaving in this way.
Yes.
And he got the brush off from the Chief Constable, oh, not a problem. Harry did actually succeed in getting Lindsay Watson arrested. But they then let the offence time out. It had a 6-month time limit. But so then came the misconduct hearing. And the really astonishing thing for me that was revealed was the police admitted that they'd given Watson the advice to tweet anonymously, to carry on.
So they'd said that specifically. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Fair Cop, we should explain, Fair Cop is a group that stands up and says, no, the police should be impartial when it comes to ideological ideas, and they've clearly taken a side. And that's what offended Lindsay Watson, is that right?
Well, I need to correct you, Andrew, because obviously, according to Lindsay Watson, what we are is an anti-trans hate group who he's reported to the anti-terrorism unit, I think, 60 times. And with impeccable timing, the day I was reading about his misconduct hearing and his dismissal, the Bar Standards Board sent me an email saying, do you like to know, we've just dismissed this complaint about you. So I thought, oh, how exciting. Clicked on it. It was from Lindsay Watson, referring to when I appeared on your show on the 11th of June. And
sorry about that. But...
well, yeah, notably you got off scot-free. But we were talking about the ideology, freedom of speech, and I said something like, I have a right not merely to criticise, but to mock and to be offensive about this ideology.
Yes.
Because it's both mockable and offensive. Now, Lindsay Watson wrote to my regulator to say that watching that made him nauseous and he shook for hours.
Watching my show?
Yes.
Well, at least it's a reaction, I suppose.
So either, Andrew, he was lying about that in an attempt to get me disbarred, or that really was his reaction. And remember, in June, when he did this, he was still a serving police officer.
Yes.
Now, imagine if you were a woman making a complaint that you were being harassed for your gender-critical views, and that's who gets sent to your door to investigate.
Well, that's what's so worrying. I mean, I don't know what's more worrying, actually, the idea that there's a serving police officer who has that reaction just to a TV show that they could easily just turn off and not watch. Or the alternative, which is that they're just cynically using this to try and get you disbarred.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a terrible situation. But Lindsay Watson has been dismissed now, and that has gone through. Thank goodness for that. So hopefully that abuse will stop. I would assume. We'll hope so anyway. Now, I want to talk to you about another issue, Sarah, because this week there was also a court case which seems to have kicked self-ID out the back door. Is that right?
Yes, it's confirming the earlier judgment from the Scottish court about what was meant by sex in the Equality Act, saying that sex doesn't just mean biological sex, it means legal sex. So men with the GRC come under the heading of sex in the Equality Act. And I think there's a real link between this and the Lindsay Watson case. Because what that's done is, OK, it's been quite clear and helpful that we know if you don't have a gender recognition certificate, you remain the sex that you were born. Now, that seems to have come to a shock to quite a lot of people. There's been a lot of obfuscation around that law. So I think that's actually really helpful. And I say, let's make the obstacle the way. Let's make it very clear that a GRC matters. So you're going to need to start carrying it and showing it on demand. Because my understanding of the law is if you have a GRC, then prima facie you're allowed in to female spaces unless it can be shown there's a reason to exclude you. If you don't have a GRC, prima facie you are excluded.
It's very tricky, this, because, of course, a GRC, effectively, it indulges in a kind of legal fiction. So for the purposes of the law, you're treated as the opposite sex. But, of course, it doesn't negate biological reality. It can never do that.
And this is why I say it's linked to Lindsay Watson, because it's really interesting. Going back to the Home Office report before the GRA was written, at the time there was, I think, 4,000 trans-identifying men and about 400 trans-identifying women. And it was very much a recognition that these are poor, unfortunate people. We must do our best to allow them to live their best lives, to feel comfortable as the people they want to be. No consideration whatsoever of the impact that that might have on women. And that's very telling. So I think what has happened is both the Equality Act and the Gender Recognition Act have been built on that foundation. Is our primary goal is to help these poor people who are suffering. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Right.
There's never any discussion of the impact on women. And what it's ended up doing, as the number of trans-identifying men increase, I think has empowered a group of men who, by definition, are mentally ill. And Lindsay Watson is a very good example of that. If you've got somebody narcissistic who feels entitled to compel everybody else to do as they say, you're going to end up with a Lindsay Watson. And when that person is in uniform, when that person is a police officer, that's terrifying.
But I have seen some gay and lesbian campaigners raise concerns about this judgment because they're saying that associations that are designed, say a lesbian association, that they will be forced by law to accept men into the association. Is that right, or have they got that wrong?
As I was saying, I reread the judgment on the train and I was quite happily struck by, at least we've got clarity now. No GRC, you're not coming in.
So sex does mean sex for the purposes of the Equality Act, yes?
Sex means both biological and legal sex. If you've got a GRC, you've got the legal sex of a woman, if you're claiming that as a man. But the really horrifying thing about the judgment, which I think a lot of people have picked up on, the Equality Commission gave an example of why this biological and legal sex was a mistake. And they gave a specific example of lesbian associations. Because what the court has ruled is, if you are a man with a GRC, you claim to be a legal lesbian. And you can come into this lesbian group fully intact, as we know 80 to 90% of trans-identifying men are, and you are suddenly a lesbian. And the court just didn't dismiss that argument from the statutory body, which is there to assist with understanding the Equality Act. It dismissed it in a really quite contemptuous way, saying it just couldn't understand the problem.
How can it not understand the problem? That seems quite straightforward
to me. Well, we come back to the earlier point I made. If all of this is built on the foundation that we're doing all of this for the poor, mostly men, the majority of men, who feel so upset with the sex they were born, there never has been a culture of thinking, well, hang on a minute, what about the women? What about the women who really, really don't want penises in their spaces, the lesbians?
Well, exactly. I mean, I can have sympathy with anyone who struggles in that way and feels they can't live their life unless they present differently. I have total sympathy for that. But the kind of person who would say, well, I'm going to remain an intact male and go along to a lesbian speed dating event, which is what happened to Jenny Watson recently, I have less sympathy for that.
I've no sympathy at all, and it's actually very frightening, because if that's a man like Lindsay Watson, I mean, I'm told that maybe the reason that the police were backing off so quickly was that this person has caused a lot of trouble, particularly for female officers that he had to work alongside. And so that is the problem for us women. When you're getting men who maintain their testicles, their penis, who've gone through male puberty, they are almost inevitably bigger and stronger than we are, and we don't want them in our spaces. And it's not just a matter of safety, it's a matter of dignity. And for lesbians, well, it's a matter of their entire existence, isn't it?
Yes.
How have we got to this stage where the only people who've been deemed worthy of consideration are men with a serious mental illness, and the impact of their desire to compel everyone else to go along with them is just not been thought about?
Yeah, very well put. Sarah Fenimore, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. And next on Free Speech Nation, dancer and choreographer Rosie Kay will be here to tell us about a new organisation she has co-founded, Freedom in the Arts. Sounds great. See you in a moment.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK. Here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. We're now going to talk about Freedom in the Arts. It's an organisation which will tackle what it describes as the culture of fear and intimidation in the creative industries. The group will offer support to artists who find themselves or their work cancelled, and they will also be directed towards legal advice if necessary. The organisation has been co-founded by dancer and choreographer Rosie Kay, who joins me now. Welcome to the show. Well, I should say welcome back to the show. Rosie, a lot of people who watch the show will have seen you on the show before, talking about your story and how this came about. Very briefly, just tell us what happened to you.
I was defending women's rights in my own home with a cast of dancers from my production that was about to open, and they took offence and complained, and that escalated, and in the end I resigned my own dance company So I've spent about the past 18 months working legally to make sure I own all my work and my name.
Yeah.
And I set up a new company, and we've already been touring the UK.
What's great is that you've actually done something. You've set up a new company, you're producing work again, you didn't allow yourself to be cowed. But a lot of people, they just think, you know, if you have your own company and you can get cancelled from it, what hope is there for anyone else?
Well, that's it. And it was just so bizarre, and I sort of fought my way through. But actually, because I've one of the few people that's spoken out in the arts and kind of stuck to, like, my own beliefs and, you know, my own sort of saying that this is important and this needs to be talked about, I became somewhat of, you know, a magnet for other people in the arts to come and talk to. And what I found out was horrific. And so I started to do, like, case studies and build sort of over, like, sort of 20, 30 people, and just felt I can't do this on my own anymore. I need some sort of umbrella organisation. So I'm not just speaking on behalf of myself anymore, I'm speaking on behalf of other artists.
It's really important because it's not just about the gender issue. There's all sorts of ways that you can tread on a landmine these days, which means that as an artist, you're no longer able to produce work, right?
That's right, and actually that's a really interesting part about this. Freedom in the arts is about any issue.
Yeah.
That people have been told they're not allowed to do this, or their work's been cancelled, or their shows have been cancelled. Or we've also found out there's kind of like secret rules that you're not allowed to put things inside your own work.
Yes.
So it can be your beliefs, or it can be actually the work you make.
Yeah.
So there's an atmosphere of, like, extreme censorship going on all levels. Artists are doing it, gatekeepers are doing it, producers are doing it. So the art is going to suffer.
So, I mean, that's one of the other things about the artist, is they should be free thinkers, right? And in a healthy artistic society, surely you'll have lots of different types of views being represented and explored and interrogated.
Oh, yes, I wish. I mean, I think the arts are also particularly vulnerable.
Yeah.
They have less security in terms of their contracts. There's also much less legislation. It's not like the university's free speech kind of act that's come in. We don't have that. And actually, even the legislation around freedom of expression is unclear. We are allowed to shock, discuss and offend.
Yes.
But even under Article 10 of the European Convention, there are protections around national security or protections around morality. So it's really difficult, and people in the arts, artists and arts organisations, don't get any kind of legal training.
Well, it's so difficult. It's not like a regular job where you go in 9 to 5 and, you know, if there's a dispute, then there's a tribunal, etc. In the arts, if you have an opinion that is considered unpopular or unfashionable, other people will say, well, we just won't put them on, or we just won't cast them, or we just won't commission them. And so there isn't really... Sometimes you could be cancelled without knowing it.
Absolutely. There's a lot of ghosting that goes on. And I think, let's be honest, artists just don't really have the sensibilities to deal with that. I think most artists are very much concerned with what they're doing, and they're putting their heart and souls on stage to be judged by the public, but they're not even getting their work out there anymore.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
And then you get to the idea of self-censorship, you know, because a lot of artists are thinking, well, if I do produce a piece that explores this sensitive issue, say, then it just won't get put on, I'll get a bad name, I won't be commissioned anymore.
And you don't know what it is that's actually going to explode and become this massive risk. It could be actually anything. So I think that what I've discovered is that the arts are just a place of absolute fear. Fear and loathing is how one senior leader described it. And so that's censoring on all aspects and all levels, and it's very unpleasant. I mean, nobody's making lots of money doing this.
No.
They're doing it because they want to, and that's being destroyed.
This all feels like it's happened very quickly, insofar as I remember works of art. I'll give an example. I saw a show by a dance company called DV8, who I'm sure you're familiar with, many years ago, called Can We Talk About This?, which was about homophobia within the Muslim community. That's a very sensitive, hot topic, but it did it really well. It was challenging, it was interesting, it was well-researched, brilliantly performed. I feel like something like that would struggle to get on today.
Interesting, that's one of the case studies that Index on Censorship looked at, and Lloyd Newson actually signed a letter to support freedom in the arts. He's talked to me a lot about how that actually, I think, was a warning sign. That was very difficult for him to put that work on.
Oh, was it? I didn't realise.
And so I think that was sort of around that time. It's been building up for about 10 years. And then I think with everything that's happened, like you've talked about lots of different other organisations and industries have become captured. The arts actually have gone for it absolutely full, hard, you know, there has been no dissent, or very little anyway.
But with freedom in the arts, you know, there's the question of self-censorship, but then there's also the question of people who are explicitly cancelled. You know, I spoke to James Dreyfus on this show, who had his name and image removed from a Doctor Who project because of his opinions, which should never happen. Will you be able to help people like that?
Yes, and we're going to try. We don't have our own, like, sort of legal department, but we do know people that can help advise, and we know where to signpost people to. I think the one side is, like, looking after artists and helping them. The other is kind of going to arts organisations and saying, should you really be putting out big political statements? Is that really your role? What's in your articles and memorandums? What's the purpose of your artistic organisation? And if that is around excellence and freedom of expression, then you need to be robust in defending that.
And finally, Rosie, do you have an optimistic view of where the arts will go in the future?
Do you know, I do. I really do. And I think it's going to be around changing training so that, like, kind of like those old-fashioned skills that are terribly unfashionable at the moment, those come back. I think there may be a renaissance after this. Once you shut it down, it can't help but explode again.
Fantastic. Rosie Kay, thank you so much. And that's the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation. But please don't go anywhere. There is an awful lot to come between now and 9 o'clock. Me and my panel will be taking more questions from this lovely studio audience. And also, we're going to hear from the activist known as Billboard Chris. We're also going to have your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems, please make sure that you email in gbviews@gbnews.com, and we'll do our best to solve all of your issues. Don't go anywhere. We will be back shortly.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There are a few showers to watch out throughout this bonfire night, particularly for western areas. They could be still heavy at times, pushing their way in across particularly northwest England, western Wales, through the Bristol Channel as well. Western areas of Scotland not escaping either. Into the second half of the night, we could just see a few beginning to skirt their way into Sussex and Kent, but a lot of other eastern areas will remain largely dry with some clear intervals. Underneath that, some mist and fog possible. It will also turn relatively chilly, particularly so for eastern Scotland, where we can expect some frost. So quite a chilly start to the new working week here. But as we head into Monday, it is a day of sunshine and showers for many. Those showers most frequent in the west once again, perhaps a few rumbles of thunder, maybe some hail in those heaviest ones as well. Into the afternoon, just starting to see those showers progress into eastern areas of England, but still with a good amount of sunshine in between them. Temperatures around 10 to 13 degrees Celsius, so fairly pleasant if you are in those sunnier spots. For Tuesday, it will again start relatively showery, but we've got this ridge of high pressure that's going to be moving its way in during the day. That will gradually help to ease off the showers, particularly for western areas as we head into the afternoon. So turning drier here, again, some sunny intervals to watch out for and enjoy if you are out and about. The winds also easing off throughout the day as well. As we head into Wednesday, there is a more persistent band of rain that will be sweeping its way across the UK. Then into Thursday, the showers return once again. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including social sensations, unfiltered dilemmas, and more questions from our lovely studio audience. But first, let's get a news update with Ray Addison.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories tonight. Boris Johnson has urged Israel's allies to stay the course in their support for Israel in its war against Hamas. The former Prime Minister toured some of the communities attacked by terrorists on the 7th of October. In an exclusive interview with our security editor Mark White, he said he was horrified by what he saw and called on the international community to remember those events.
Look at what happened. Remember, this was sadism. This was an orgy of brutality and torture against innocent people. People were chased around the rooms in their houses and shot. Now, there's a difference between that and what the Israeli soldiers are now trying to do in Gaza. So your point, Mark, about what the international community needs to remember is the difference between what Israel experienced, the terrorist attack, and what they're trying to do now. What they're trying to do now is make sure that never happens again.
And you can see more of that exclusive interview with Boris Johnson tomorrow from breakfast at 6 and throughout the day on GB News. The Rafah crossing did not reopen today, despite Foreign Office hopes that more Britons could escape from Gaza. Earlier, First Minister Humza Yousaf posted a photo showing his in-laws, who arrived back in Scotland after being trapped in the Strip for more than 3 weeks. Egypt decided to suspend evacuations following a deadly attack on an ambulance. The Met Police say 6 people have now been charged after 29 arrests at pro-Palestine protests in central London. It comes as the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary expressed concerns about further demonstrations during Armistice Day. Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has promised to take a robust approach to ensure commemorative events are not undermined. Deputy PM Oliver Dowden saying that Armistice Day should be about honouring the sacrifices made by previous generations.
I have really grave concerns about this, and I think that certainly representing a large Jewish community as I do, but it's broader than the Jewish community, we should be honouring and respecting the sacrifice made by previous generations. And you certainly shouldn't have the kind of intimidation that you see in those marches.
And Thames Water has declared a major incident as thousands of homes in Godalming in Surrey have been left without water due to the effects of Storm Ciarán. The bad weather conditions have caused issues at Shalford Water Treatment Works. Thames Water say they're working to restore supplies to the area, and in the meantime they're providing bottled water. GB News understands some local stores have started to sell out as residents go to buy their own. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Let's go back now to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So let's get some more questions from our wonderful audience. Our first question is from Sandy. Hi, Sandy.
Hi. Is J.K. Rowling right to criticise New South Australian rules?
Yeah, I enjoyed this. I was watching in real time J.K. Rowling just going at this one, and she was absolutely right to do so. So in South Australia now, there are new rules saying that the court system, they're basically suggesting that people should use the preferred pronouns of the person, even if that's someone's attacker. This is an absolute... I mean, it means courts and judges are basically saying to defendants, you have to lie on the... I mean, you've just sworn an oath that you're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and now they're telling you to lie.
It's gaslighting on an insane scale, but beyond that, that you should have to care about the feelings of your attacker.
Right, exactly.
It's disgusting.
It makes no sense at all. But, I mean, just on... and people say, well, it wouldn't happen here. It kind of has. You know, we've already had judges say, well, you should do this, or at least making that statement and advising.
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely. And once we've had the Isla Bryson situation, men in women's prisons, I mean, that's very clearly saying that. It's slightly different, but... I mean, it is, as Josh says, it's just absurd. And it's from the Be Kind Brigade.
Yeah, but why are they infecting the courts? Why the judiciary? Why does it go that far, you know?
Because, well, I'm sure this person goes home, this judge, and feels really good about themselves.
Yeah.
Doesn't think about the actual victims.
But you expect more from judges, don't you? I mean, I know you say, oh, the average, they don't think properly. I really thought judges were there to think. I thought that was one of the features.
I wonder if it's within Australia, it's part of... It's like the pushback. Like there's that idea of Australian as the sort of Crocodile Dundee sort of masculine thing, and this is their pushback. You know, the swing just
it might be like
further.
Yeah, like in Ireland. I mean, you know, they've sort of really tried to leave behind their sort of Catholic past, but they've gone completely the other way with the woke ideology. It's almost like they need a religious belief system.
That a little bit too far.
Anyway, we're going to get a question now from Peter. Where's Peter? Hi, Peter.
Hi. Is Suella Braverman heartless?
What a question, Peter. What do you think? Do you think she's heartless?
I don't know. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, no, good answer. This is because she's posted on Twitter, Suella Braverman has said, we will always support those who are genuinely homeless, but we cannot allow our streets to be taken over by rows of tents occupied by people, many from abroad, living on the streets as a lifestyle choice. I think that's the phrase that has upset people.
She might not be heartless, but she's got a terrible way with words, hasn't she?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Mark Later's YouTube channel, which is him filming people in LA who are on the streets.
Yes.
And it's really horrific, like the problem over there. So I can see the logic of, hey, we don't want to go that far.
Yes. What do you think about this one,
Well, we've got bad weather here.
Yeah, OK.
So it's just not. It's not going to be the same way. That footage of Seattle, of San Francisco, is terrifying. It's like a hellscape.
Yeah.
And I can understand, the desire to not make it. But the point about that kind of legislation is are you actually going to provide a viable alternative?
Yes.
Now, if you are and you're going to be able to get people off the street, then surely that's great. But we're not dealing with lifestyle choices. A lot of people, it's mental health issues.
Well, there's that. But I kind of I've always felt that, you know, we can't be a civilised society where there are homeless people. I don't understand why there should ever be homeless people.
They managed to deal with the problem during COVID. So it's about resources.
Yeah, there must be a way to deal with this. I mean, surely. And I understand that the homeless charities say the worst thing you can do is give money to homeless people. That's not what you should be doing.
You've got to give them drugs straight away.
Well, exactly. This is the point. So you should actually be giving money to the charities. That's the way to do it, you know. But there must be a way to solve this crisis. Anyway, I'm sure we'll come back to that at some point. We've got a question now from Tim. Tim? Hello, Tim.
Hello. This week, Britain's loneliest sheep was rescued by local farmers. Should we all celebrate by eating more lamb?
Tim, you are brutal. You're a brutal carnivore. I'm outraged. Britain's loneliest sheep, and I saw this sheep. It was down a mountain, right? For over 2 years.
Yes.
And there's the sheep on our screens now.
Look how fat he is.
It's not fat, it's wool.
It's wool. It's wool. Don't fat shame the sheep. Okay. So it was there. It was at the bottom of this cliff, and apparently it was really difficult to get to the sheep. So it was there for over 2 years. They just had to leave it, and in the end they got like a winch and pulled it up. But look, Cressida, maybe the sheep was happy being alone. You know, maybe the sheep was a loner. Some people enjoy solitude.
Very unlikely, Andrew.
Really?
I don't think sheep are known for being introverts.
No?
No, they like to be in a group. I was so happy about this. I thought, fantastic, it's been saved. And then today I saw an animal rights charity moaning about this because the sheep's been sent to a farm.
Right.
Rather than a sanctuary. And it's not even that it's going to get slaughtered, it's that it's a petting farm, and they think that...
So what do they want for the sheep?
They want the sheep to have a sanctuary, somewhere peaceful, where, because it hasn't...
A few weeks at Butlins?
Yes,
that kind
yes,
of
that kind of thing. And I felt so sad, because I was delighted. I thought, oh, the sheep's been rescued, how lovely, we can all sleep better tonight. But apparently there's a doubt.
I feel good for the sheep. But I don't know what more... But sheep aren't that demanding. I think it'll be fine with a petting zoo.
Possibly. I mean, it's a shame. Loneliest sheep are the tastiest sheep.
Honestly, speaking as a vegetarian, I'm absolutely outraged at all of you, and you, Tim. Vile creature. OK, so let's move on. Have we got another question? Yes, this one's from Tommy. Tommy. Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Andy.
And your brother, of course. Yes, what's your question?
Will cigarette style warning signs on the meat packaging save the planet?
Well, you know, this is an interesting one. The meat packaging, I read about this week, because they used to put, they still do, don't they? They put these warnings on cigarette packets, very alarmist, with pictures of lungs and all sorts of stuff saying, don't smoke, because this will happen to you. And now they're saying, well, these are researchers from Durham University are saying they should do this for meat. Put images on meat products, discouraging people, because it will say, you know, the global warming will happen. You know, is it just a picture of a globe on fire and this kind of... Is that going to work? If someone's got like a meat product, which I know you enjoy, lamb, say, lonely lamb.
Lonely lamb, I'd be happy.
If it had a sort of graphic warning of what you were doing to the planet, would you be dissuaded from eating that lamb?
Nah.
You see, this is the problem.
Well, I mean, the libertarian Jedwood over there. But it's appreciated. But yeah, whether we do have to cut down on our meat consumption.
Yes.
What's interesting, I thought, was that it was the images of the planet that caused the greatest decline of meat use, as opposed to your health. Like, if you had a picture of sort of a chicken vindaloo and then the aftermath.
Oh, Josh.
That might help.
Wow.
I mean, the thing about this is people love their meat. And I've got friends who shouldn't eat meat, bacon, for instance, for religious reasons, but they still do.
Really?
Because they just love it too much.
I'm veggie like you, and I'm not a fan of the smell of bacon. I couldn't care less.
Yeah, vegetarians.
I don't think it's going to work. So these images, it's not. It's like pictures from Michael Jackson's Earth song, isn't it? It's always that kind of scorched earth.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you put a picture of Kate Moss on the fridge, you don't lose weight, do you?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I don't know.
No, I don't think it'll work either, to be honest. But, you know, may as well give it a try. We've got a question now from Alan. Where's Alan?
Hi, me again.
Oh, you again?
I've got all the best questions.
You're very keen, Alan. Go on, what's your question?
Well, this is something Josh actually touched on earlier on.
Yes.
With the Party of Islam attempting to register with the Electoral Commission this week, but they failed, but only on a few technicalities. So
yes.
When they do actually get that process done properly, how is that going to affect Labour's chance of winning the general election?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, this one. So the Party of Islam, it did have its application rejected. But where does that leave Labour? I mean, you were talking about Labour effectively making a real effort to make sure that they've got the Muslim vote wrapped up. But if there was a Party of Islam, that would split that vote, presumably.
Yeah, I believe so. And I think it's good that we have don't have proportional.
Really? Why?
Well, no, it would be interesting to see if people are going to vote along tribal. You know, there are left-wing Jewish people I know. There are right-wing Jewish people I know. I wouldn't vote for the Jewish party.
The Jewish party. But that's the point, isn't it? I feel more comfortable with the idea of religion and politics is kind of kept separate. That's because I believe in secularism, and I think that defends religious freedoms.
The question is, how do you define Islam? Because there's political Islam,
yes,
which is the seeking Sharia law. Instead, that is sort of one of the definitions.
Would the Party of Islam be pushing for Sharia law? Presumably
not.
Well,
as the spokesman, I'd like to say.
Well, surely eventually. I mean, how could it be any other way?
Well, but that's a problem, isn't it? You know.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. I don't think these two things should be...
But I'm also a Democrat, and I think that anyone should be allowed to set up their own political parties, and I'm not threatened by multiple small political parties, and I, unlike Josh, think there should be proportional representation, because I'm a Democrat. I think we need more of that.
You wouldn't put a caveat on that and say, but not based on religion?
No, because I can't say... I support political parties as long as they agree with me, or as long as they don't offend me.
It makes life so much easier.
Well, I suppose it does. But it's an interesting question anyway. So we've got a question now from Gillian. Gillian? Hi, Gillian.
Hi.
What's your question?
How come the wheels have completely fallen off the English cricket team? What's going on?
Gillian, I'm glad you asked me this because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of cricket. That's the one with the bats, isn't it? Gillian.
Apparently they've got wheels now.
Have they got wheels as well? What's going on? Gillian, you're going to have to fill me in on this. What's going wrong with the England cricket team?
Maybe that's the problem. It's that no one in England knows what's going on.
Well, that's right. We don't know. We don't. Are you a cricket fan then?
I am. Yes, I am.
Yeah, but you're Australian, yes?
I am.
Yeah. So aren't Australia better than us at cricket? Is that not how it works?
Usually, yeah.
Usually, okay.
Yeah, and
so why have the wheel? Josh, you're a sporty guy.
I wonder if it's a deliberate plan to keep the Commonwealth going. Like we send out a rubbish English cricket team, and then the Australia and all these different countries just feel, oh, poor old England.
Have they lost this week or something?
I don't know.
Have they lost a big game?
Come last.
They came last. Yeah. That's bad. Even I know that.
Have they got a lot of women players?
After the Netherlands.
Josh Howie. Unbelievable.
In the women's team.
He's so offensive. Cressida, what do you think?
I've heard of cricket. I'm not familiar with its work. I thought that it happened in the summertime. Maybe the game's gone on a really long time. Or it's somewhere else.
No, it's hotter in Australia at the moment,
okay.
apparently.
Good luck.
Oh, it's in India.
It's in India.
Okay,
It's in India.
but it's hotter in India too, I think. Oh, look, we are way out of our depth. We have no idea what we're talking about.
In this basement. If there's no cricket down here, I won't know about it.
Maybe that's something we should take up. All right, anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be talking some more about the pro-Palestine protests planned for London next weekend and the free speech issues concerned. See you shortly. I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to
Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. A pro-Palestine rally has been organised for Saturday, November the 11th in central London. Estimates suggest that tens of thousands of people will assemble, and the timing, of course, is not accidental. November the 11th is Armistice Day. Some have suggested the march has been scheduled to ensure maximum publicity. Well, we're already talking about it, so if that's the case, job done. But many have interpreted the choice of date as a declaration of contempt for British values and history. Certainly, the pro-Palestine marches so far have been heavily populated by what we might call intersectional activists, those with pronouns in their bios, a tendency to treat disagreement as a form of violence, and a general disdain for Western civilization and all that it has accomplished. But these are strange bedfellows in many ways, as one activist who attempted to raise the Progress Pride flag soon discovered. In this footage, you can see that some other protesters took offence and tore the flag down. And why? Well, because same-sex activity is illegal in Gaza, and gay people there know better than to be out and proud. Indeed, we know that there is a real problem with homophobia within the Islamic community, even here in the UK. A poll for Channel 4 in 2016 found that a little over half of British Muslims believe that homosexuality ought to be against the law. Not merely that they disapproved of it, but that they wanted it criminalised. Activists at the time were quick to brush this off, claiming there was nothing to worry about, and they were thereby, of course, siding with the most reactionary and ultra-conservative elements of the Islamic community at the expense of gay Muslims. And this has always been the case. While unbelievably brave women in Iran are risking their lives, throwing off their veils and burning them in the street, some Western commentators are claiming that the hijab is empowering and even a feminist symbol. These are what we call luxury beliefs. And this weekend, another left-wing activist found himself colliding with the brick wall of reality as he tried to explain to his pro-Palestine allies that kids could be trans.
This guy is trying to propagate anti-LGBTQ propaganda. He's trying to tell children that they are not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. Bro. No. Black nail polish on is a man, my bro. Stop talking. Stop talking. Then in some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to respect that decision. But in religion, yeah.
An awkward situation, I'm sure you'll agree. But then this ideology that has infected so many on the left doesn't have space for nuance or complexities. These activists are reading from a script, not thinking for themselves, and they are baffled when the minorities they support express prejudices of their own. And so we can expect to see many of these pro-LGBTQIA+ identity-obsessed, Britain-bashing activists turning up at the protest on November the 11th, not because they have a secure understanding of the war in the Middle East, but because it's what they're expected to do. They'll be chanting the usual slogans, like the people in this video on the London Tube just yesterday.
Palestine will be free. There is only one solution. Intifada revolution.
Intifada. Can it be the case that they don't understand the implications of these phrases? The term intifada is most commonly associated with the suicide bombings and other terrorist attacks committed in Israel in the 1990s and early 2000s, and yet activists are now pretending these connotations don't exist, just as they are pretending that from the river to the sea is a harmless phrase calling for equal rights. Well, here's a protester holding a banner with the phrase "from the river to the sea," accompanied by an image that celebrates the terrorist atrocities of Hamas on October the 7th. So why does no one at that protest complain? Why does no one tell him to take it down? Why is it tolerated? Why, for that matter, aren't the protesters denouncing Hamas publicly, given that this is the terrorist group that boasts about using innocent Palestinians as human shields? One person held up a placard pointing out that Hamas are terrorists and was attacked by protesters and was pulled away by police.
Hamas terrorists رو یکی از مبارزین پادشاهی خواهد دادن.
So why did that happen? I mean, surely if the protesters are pro-Palestine, they would oppose Hamas, given that the group represents such a major threat to the people of Gaza. Of course, any decent person will be horrified by the deaths of innocent civilians in Gaza, and calls for a ceasefire make complete sense. But why aren't these protesters therefore calling on Hamas to release the hostages and thereby make a ceasefire possible? Which brings us on to the question of what we can do about the protest planned on November the 11th. Many are calling for the protest to be banned. Rishi Sunak has stopped short of a ban, but has called on the Met Police to make robust use of its powers to prevent the remembrance events being disrupted. And yet a people polling survey for GBNews has found that almost half of the population believe the march should not be allowed to go ahead. Others have been calling for deportations. But this isn't the solution. Liberal values are always hard to maintain in times of crisis. It's very easy to solve our problems through authoritarian means, to resort to censorship, to deport those citizens we disapprove of, or, yes, to ban protests. But by doing so, we effectively surrender our principles to the very people who do not value them at all. Why give them that much power? Some of the sentiments I've seen expressed by these protesters are genuinely disgusting and disturbing, and to see them declared on the streets of London on Armistice Day is going to upset a lot of people. But that's the price we pay for living in a free society. We shouldn't be banning any protests, because we're better than that. Criticism, ridicule, counter-protest. These are the tools for tackling intolerance in a free society. Once we allow our commitment to liberal values to fall away, we lay the groundwork for future tyranny. And that's a mistake we may very well live to regret. So I'm going to talk to my panellists about this question, because it is difficult, isn't it, Josh? You know, we have this situation where, according to the poll, around half of the UK say we should ban the marches. You, I know, have many objections to these marches. Do you think they should be banned?
I feel very caught in the middle, because I have an intellectual side, and I have actually read your free speech book, and I get it. I can get it. I can take it in on an intellectual level, as someone who's Jewish, who is on the. You know, when you hear people chanting for Intifada, and you have seen the images of pizza places blown apart, when you hear from the river to the sea, which is based on an original Arabic saying, which is basically calling for genocide, and the endless hypocrisy that's going on here. And when we talk about microaggressions, stuff like that,
exactly.
It's like, oh, don't use that word because field hand or field is a microaggression because it has field hand. It's like the Jewish population are telling you that this is a call for a genocide, and even if you don't believe it, even though it is, that's how it's perceived, but that's OK?
But this is why I wanted to play the clip, because I want people to understand, you know, if they're on that tube carriage, if a Jewish person was on that tube carriage, how that would make them feel, how intimidating that would be. And the thing about it is you're absolutely right. A lot of these activists will say, you've got to ban microaggressions, you've got to cancel people for saying offensive things. They're not, like you say, they're not thinking about the offence caused here. It's almost like that doesn't matter. No. Double standards.
It's double standards, and for them, and also the victims of 7th of October don't matter. The Jews are dehumanised for them. We're not real victims. They don't want to address it. At these marches, if they were calling for genuine peace, if there was a call for the 8,000 missiles that Hamas have still sending over, if they were calling for the 230 hostages to be returned, including babies and people, I mean, but they're not doing that. They're calling for genocide.
That's what I don't understand. Why they won't, you know...
Because I believe that they hate Jews. That's what they do.
So even in that case, so let's take that point. Like, even people who hate Jews, even people who have that sinister, deeply ingrained prejudice, should they have freedom of speech? You see, this is the question, isn't it? And you're right to raise the emotional aspect, because I think that the trouble with all of this is that in times of heightened emotion, we forget about the broader principle, which actually will bite us all eventually.
There are broader principles for me to be able to live freely in the city that I was born in as a Jew.
Yeah.
To not have to put away my Star of David in fear.
Of course.
To be able to take my family into town on a Saturday, or you know, to go to the shops or whatever.
So it's difficult, and you know, the reason why I mentioned the idea of laying the groundwork for future tyranny is to give an example. Is during the Battle of Cable Street, you know, you had left-wing parties saying we need public order acts, we need to be able to prevent fascists from assembling. All of those laws were eventually used against left-wing groups. People, you know, it always happens.
I see this absolutely on an intellectual level, and I'm not calling for these marches to be banned as such. Although I would say it's called, you know, Remembrance Day. It's the day of remembrance. It's not they're saying, oh, we'll do it 2 hours after and down the road. No, that's a day for the people who have fought and fallen for this country. So I think that it should be postponed to the following day. I don't see the harm with that. I'm not saying these marches shouldn't happen. The main thing I think should be seen, and there is a part of people exposing themselves, but the main thing is these need to be properly policed, and they're just not being. You do have jihadi flags, you do have calls for jihad, you do have the police making excuses, and it turns out that the head of their advisory board is calling for the river to see themselves. So
yes.
Do your job.
And again, there's all these language games going on. You know, the people saying that from the river to sea doesn't mean genocide, but also people saying when Hizb ut-Tahrir were calling for jihad, they were just talking about an interior spiritual struggle.
To say Muslim armies behind them.
Muslim armies was the phrase that was used. So the problem with these activists is they play word games to try and gaslight you and to sort of say, well, it doesn't mean what you think it means. What do you think, Chris? I mean, the thing is, it is so complicated and emotional, and Josh is absolutely right to raise that aspect of this. And there's the actual practicality of living in safety as a Jewish person in London. I mean, Jewish schools have had to close.
That's outrageous, isn't it? That's where you start to think, well, at what point, you know, is there a line where the protest would get banned? I don't know. And I agree, I'm completely stuck in the middle. One of my concerns is, will the mainstream media cover it accurately? Because it's all very well saying, let them expose themselves. But if that doesn't get broadcast to the population, then people won't be...
Can I just say, as a Jew, though, or as a human being, BBC, and I've always been slightly ambivalent about the BBC News and stuff like that, but no, they were like, they absolute gaslighting to the population. They're like, oh, it was largely peaceful or whatever, and there were just signs calling for Jewish people's death there.
They've done that before.
Sky News is the same, absolutely.
Yeah, they've got form on that.
And it's driving me, it is this feeling, that's the whole point of being gaslit, isn't it?
Yes.
You feel like you're being driven mad because you're going online and you're seeing the hate speech, the calling of your death, of your family's death. And then you turn on the news and it's like, oh, we're here and we're having a lovely day out.
So I saw this today, or yesterday, when it was the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, is it Jake Willis-Simons, posted about that clip that I played where someone's calling for intifada and made the point, this is a call for murder, right? And then a historian, some historian posted back saying, look at the paranoia of this individual. It's not paranoid, because the word intifada does have those connotations irrespective of whether you trace it to the origins of the term or anything like that.
Of course it is. Then they know that. And then
they must know, right?
Of course they know.
Well, as you said, we're used to having the least generous interpretation of language possible. That's very common at the moment. And they're now asking for the most generous interpretation.
Right, that's it. Because these same people are always going on about dog whistles. Aren't they? And they're saying that Suella Braverman talking about multiculturalism, she's sending a dog whistle to far-right racists.
Yes.
You know, forgetting that she is, you know, the child of immigrants herself.
This is not a dog whistle. This is a very well-documented set of phrases that we're now being asked to look at the outside
anomalous...
And
seeing the spreading of, you know, Germany, Star of David's painted on people's houses. You saw a woman in France stabbed a 30-year-old woman and a swastika daubed on her door. This is all part of it.
So this is the problem as well, is that it's not just theoretical at that point.
No, it's not.
So there's the practical, and this is where the struggle comes in. But this is also why I think...
This is where I would say, when you get to the point you've closed a school in the UK, I mean, I think that's absolutely outrageous that we've gone that far.
We've gone to a place where a teacher's in hiding. This is not... This is part of a process of not standing up to this ideology.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think it's important that we have these difficult discussions, because I think it's so key, it's so crucial. Anyway, next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by Chris Elston, the activist commonly known as Billboard Chris, who travels the world combating gender identity ideology. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. I'm joined here by Chris Elston. He's the activist who's commonly known as Billboard Chris, who travels the world trying to raise awareness of gender identity ideology. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you're not in the UK very often. We've spoken on this show before, so I'm very grateful for you coming back to talk about what it is you do. What is it that you do?
I have conversations, and I aim to start conversations in order to raise awareness about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history, the business of trying to change the sex of children.
And you stand there wherever people gather in a billboard which says children cannot consent to puberty blockers.
That's right.
And people react in all sorts of ways. I mean, I've seen clips of you being physically attacked, even. You obviously have a lot of courage if you're going to put yourself in that situation.
Well, kids are being cut up and sterilized and turned into lifelong medical patients. So if I have to take the odd broken bone or bruise here and there, that's not a big deal.
What is the worst experience you've had?
Broken arm.
Broken arm?
Yeah, Antifa in Montreal a couple years ago, swinging a large traffic cone at my face, which I blocked 4 times with my forearm, but broke that bone.
But broke the arm.
Yeah.
OK. Now, you were here, you're obviously here this week in London. Yesterday you were at the Palestine March, the Palestine rally. Lots of people there. And you were asked to move away by a police officer after a female protester started jabbing you in the face with a Palestine flag. Was that right?
Yeah, there was a young woman who took issue with me just being there because I guess they think that there's only one issue in the world. And so she kind of caused a ruckus, and then this other woman came at me and kind of jabbed her flag stick in my face.
Which is obviously invading your personal boundaries. Let's have a look. I think we've got a clip of that. Let's have a look.
Why are you here? Why are you here?
I'm here to have conversations.
Why are you being offensive?
Hi.
Years ago?
Do you want to move over there? Yeah. I'm moving you over there to prevent the breach of the peace. If I stand peacefully and people come and get aggressive with me, I'm the one breaching the peace? If your presence at that location is causing people to do that, then yes, OK?
Now, I find that very disturbing, Chris, because what he's effectively saying is if the mob is big enough and intimidating enough and scary enough, then they're going to blame the person who's upset them for a breach of the peace. But surely those who are responsible for violent actions are the people committing the violence.
That's what I think. This has happened to me several times, especially in Canada. But, you know, he literally said, and he came back to me later as well, and he said it was easier to move you than it is to take care of these people.
Well, that's probably true.
It is, but you know what he could do as a first action is he could just talk to those 3 people and say, leave them alone.
Yes.
That should be the first course of action. And if you use a little authority as a police officer, I've dealt with police hundreds of times, it usually works.
Yes.
But as a default, we shouldn't just be removing the peaceful people to appease the violent people, that just encourages more violence.
And it sets a very bad precedent, doesn't it? But I mean, that to me is I mean, it's completely unforgivable, really. But then at the same time, you were there. There's a lot of people there. Did it feel like this could kick off, that it could get very violent, that the police may not be able to control it?
Well, almost all of these Muslim protesters support my message, literally 100% of them probably, if we had a conversation about this, because they're virtually all against child transition as well.
Right.
But a lot of them just think that, you know, I shouldn't be there talking about a separate issue.
Right, I see.
My whole thing is I go to wherever the people are, because I aim to start a lot of conversations, and there are thousands of people taking my pictures during the day. That starts all sorts of conversations I'll never know about. But there is more than one issue in the world. That's Trafalgar Square, where a lot of these protests go on. And
well,
I upset people.
I mean, people are talking about that. That clip has gone viral.
Yep.
But, you know, people think that you're a provocateur, that you're needlessly provocative, that you're just causing trouble. Do you think they have a point?
No, it's just these incidents like this are the ones that get seen by most people, but 99% of the time I'm just out there having normal, beautiful conversations with people. But I'm not going to shy away from these events where there are a lot of people, because it is important that we have these conversations, because kids are being harmed for life, and we need to be able to talk about it. So sometimes I'll go to some of these transgender rallies or whatever, because you have these people out there celebrating what is child abuse. And I think someone has to be brave enough to offer the counter-narrative, which is the truth, that children cannot consent to any of this life-altering...
And you've been there at sort of trans activist rallies as well. And, I mean, that must be particularly dangerous, because you can guarantee 100% of the people there will be against what you say.
Yeah, March 31st of this year, I was assaulted by a man who identifies as a woman. They were screaming in both of my ears as I was giving an interview to a journalist. There were about 3 dozen police there. And I got throat punched in the face, pushed from behind, pulled by another guy simultaneously, as the investigating officer, a young woman, was smiling throughout the assault.
Did the police not do anything to protect you?
Nothing. They didn't charge the person. They didn't discipline the officer. It's truly surreal, because there couldn't be a more clear-cut case of assault, and they do nothing about it.
You made a very interesting point about the pro-Palestine marches, that the majority of people there would actually support your cause, but you do have these interesting conflations of Antifa or left-wing, normally middle-class white activists turning up who are all very pro-LGBTQIA+, aligning themselves with people who fundamentally disagree. We've actually got a clip of what happened when this clash occurred. Let's have a look.
This guy is trying to propagate anti-LGBTQ propaganda. He's trying to tell children that they are not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. Man, bro. No. Black nail polish on is a man, bro. Stop talking. Stop talking. Let some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to respect that decision. But in religion, yeah.
Now, a lot of people found that hilarious, because, you know, that guy, and he had sort of fingernail paint on as well, and I think they started mocking him for that. Did he just genuinely expect that the Muslim protesters at that rally would be all about the LGBTQIA+ group?
Yeah, it seems like he did. So I was just walking down the street, and he swore at me and called me a fascist. So I stopped, and I pulled out my phone, and I started to have a conversation with him. I'll upload my conversation later. I haven't had time. But this is what I do. I just talk to people, and I was trying to ask him some questions, and then they came along and took care of the job for me, and he ran away.
I mean, it is funny, but I kind of think it's so naive. I almost feel sorry for him in a weird way, you know?
Yeah, and I think he's either from Canada or America as well. So
he just didn't get it.
This is like the typical Antifa activist that I deal with all the time.
I mean, that's incredible. When someone calls you a fascist, your instinct is to pull out your phone and film it. My instinct is to run a mile, right? Who's right here?
Well, I'm not going to judge you, but I think it's important that we have these conversations, and I'm not there. Obviously, he's not ready to receive true information, so I just ask questions to get them thinking. You know, what is a transgender child? And they can never tell me.
But that's the point. You see, I don't think when someone's screaming fascist, in my mind, I'm thinking that is not someone who's capable of rational thought, rational discussion. That's an extremist. That's someone who really needs to be de-radicalized rather than persuaded, right?
Right.
So
but when I
take a different approach.
Yeah, when I capture these conversations, it's helping to educate other people. It's helping...
The people watching.
That's right.
Yeah.
So There's two facets to what I do. There's the conversation in the moment on the street, and most of the time I'm just having nice conversations, helping to educate people. But I record them, I post them online, and those today are getting seen by 1 million or 2 million people, so it's helping to educate them how to deal with these conversations. It's helping to teach them about this, because ultimately the only way we stop this child abuse is through educating the populace about what's going on, and ultimately it's going to be parents who put a stop to this. And we've had fantastic success, especially in America the last 12 months. 20 states have passed legislation to stop this.
That's a really interesting idea, because I went on a TV show once. It's called The Big Questions, and I knew I was going to be the person with the unfashionable view, and I knew everyone was going to shout at me. And a commentator called Melanie Phillips gave me some advice, and she said, don't even think about what's going on in the room. Think about all the thousands of people watching at home. And that really helped, because all of a sudden I realised the more they shout at me, the more my point will be proved. Yeah. And that's really what you do in a nutshell, insofar as you're taking all this abuse, sometimes violence, but you're thinking of all the people when these clips go viral and how that will appear. And to be honest, those activists don't come out well.
That's right. I always tell people who come out on the street with me, I want you to imagine that 1 million people are watching us and behave accordingly. And because that's what ends up happening. And with these moments, I mean, that video's been seen probably 20 million times.
Wow.
So he's doing my job for me, and I want to thank him very much.
But it is unbelievable, and I really do credit you with the courage of doing it, because a lot of people wouldn't do it. But you must, at some point, think to yourself, do you know what? I shouldn't keep doing this. It's just too much.
No, I never think that, to be honest with you. No. I don't get worried by these people at all anymore. At the beginning, it was a bit different.
Yeah.
But honestly, in that moment, I think it's kind of funny. I'm not worried about what they say to me or with them yelling at me or anything. And it's interesting, I was talking with Jordan Peterson's wife the other day, we did a podcast, and I took his personality test, and I was in the 2nd percentile for neuroticism, which basically means that none of this stuff bothers me, so I guess I'm just kind of wired for this.
And what do you see happening in the future? You're going to keep on campaigning. I think things are changing. I think people are becoming more aware.
Yeah.
So do you have hope that eventually, at the very least, our major institutions, our NHS, our government will stop pushing this stuff and wake up to the problem?
Yes, I've never had any doubt in my mind from day one that we're going to put a stop to this. It's simply a matter of how many children are harmed before we do. The NHS conducted a systematic review of all the evidence and found that none of this was helping these children psychologically, so they've basically put a stop to it. Sweden, Finland, same thing has happened. Denmark and Norway are putting a stop to it. Finally, the American Academy of Pediatrics in the US is conducting a systematic review, and it's because so many parents have learned what's going on. And all sorts of other people are starting to wear their hats. We now have a law firm in Texas solely dedicated to suing for these detransitioners. 4 men, 4 dads with 17 kids between them left their law firms because they felt a calling to fight for these kids. So they have all sorts of lawsuits flying now, and that's one great way to put a stop to this.
Chris Elston, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And next on Free Speech Nation, a controversial Christmas advert. A man drives around during a major storm, and some guys drink beer from big glasses. It's almost time for Social Sensations. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, as they turn a blind eye to calls for terror on our streets, is British policing no longer fit for purpose? I'll be asking former Home Office Minister Anne Widdecombe. In my take at 10, protests on Armistice Day are a profound insult to our war dead and an attack on the values of this country. Plus, my top pundits, including Annunziata Rees-Mogg. And tomorrow's papers, we're live from 10.
Free Speech Nation. So it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. And first up, it's this video. You must have seen this. It's an advert which has caused a lot of discussion. Let's have a look.
But I won't do that. No, I won't do that. I would do anything for love, anything you've been dreaming of, but I just won't do that.
So a lot of people have said, you know, this is Marks & Spencer's trashing Christmas, trashing tradition. They even burn a card with the word Christmas on it. Are you upset about this, Cressida?
I'm disgusted. I mean, we're a godless society, aren't we? If you don't have God, you start worshipping Sophie Ellis-Bextor. Also, I hadn't heard the music until... Why didn't they use the original?
Oh, well, maybe it was too expensive.
Oh, OK. Lovely.
But there's quite a trend at the moment of taking old 90s songs and doing dodgy, awful covers for adverts.
It's passed me by. Well, I find it highly irritating, and I agree with Catherine Birbalsingh.
Well, yeah, Catherine Birbalsingh made this point. She said that this was just an attack on British culture. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's nice to see you attacking the production value.
No, I think that's right.
Element of it, rather than the ethos. But yes, of course, it's a massive misfire. But then this is almost, I think, this has become a Christmas tradition in itself, isn't it?
Who can annoy the most people?
Yeah, who can make the worst advert? So really, ironically, they've done the most quintessentially Christmassy thing ever.
But didn't Sainsbury's do one?
Well done, M&S.
Didn't Sainsbury's do one a few years ago where it was 2 Tommies in the trenches in World War I? And it was really tasteless.
Wow.
And it was bizarre. So
that's the problem, is because they're made in August, everybody's on the beach and really happy. Yeah. They can't imagine Christmas and they don't want to get there. And then
all right, well, let's move on. This is a video. It's a YouTuber who decided to drive around commentating on a massive storm. Let's have a look.
They're currently experiencing 100-mile-an-hour winds. Take a look at this. Wow. Whoa. Gee whiz. Look at this. Feel that wind. Jeez. Bringing you live storm, care and destruction as it happens, everybody.
Now, I admire that because he's used the word gee whiz. And I think we need to bring that back. We need to bring back phrases like that. You know what else we need to bring back? Shaking a fist at someone. Oh, I'm so angry at you. I'm shaking my fist. That's what we need to do. What do you think of that?
Storm.
Yeah.
With the old wind.
Yeah. What do you make of that video? Did you enjoy it?
I think it was riveting.
Yeah? No. If he's going to use gee whiz and old-fashioned, you should say ripping or spiffing.
Spiffing, yes.
Yeah.
It was very, used very sort of 1920s upper
Wasn't
class.
it?
Enid Blyton language.
It was.
Did I detect a West Country accent there? I just want to say, as a Bristolian, we're not all like that. We don't just go and watch the weather for fun.
Yeah, well, entertainment's difficult to come by in those parts, isn't it? All right, so finally, a group of friends who went out for just one drink. Famous last words. Let's have a look. No, they are regular-sized human beings. But the thing about that, I mean, is that a beer keller? Is that what they call it, a beer keller? Where you
I've never seen anything like that before. I just want to know the address.
Well, you know, there's that old tradition of drinking a yard of ale, and that's quite a mammoth beverage.
Yes, and it ends in carnage, doesn't it? It's a rugby team
But you can't do that
tradition.
in the EU, right?
No.
It's got to be meter.
I think they've shown us the wrong video. We should have seen an hour later what happened after
exactly.
Them going to the toilet every 2 seconds.
I'm sure they were. OK, we've just got time for some unfiltered dilemmas. Thanks for sending them in. Our first dilemma is from Martin. Martin says, I appreciate this is not the biggest issue in the world right now, but it really grinds my gears. Another interesting old phrase. What should be done with people who sit in the middle seat of the 5 at the back of the bus when the other seats are empty? It means that one person is effectively taking up 5 seats. I mean, look, that has troubled me as well. I've lost sleep over that. What do you think?
Well, it's not... No, you can get past them.
You can you?
Yeah, of course you can. It's not... I mean...
You just say, excuse me, and...
Yeah, what is going on?
I think Martin needs to get out more. I think he needs to go on more buses.
More buses. And just to be a bit more confident.
Yeah.
I think we've just got time for one more dilemma. This is from Sarah. I've been looking after my friend's cat while she's on holiday. Unfortunately, when I last went to feed him, he was no longer with us. I didn't want to ruin my friend's holiday, so I thought I'd tell her when she gets back. But now she's asking for picture updates. What do I do? I do sort of understand why you don't want to tell her till she gets back. It will ruin the holiday. You are being kind, but you should have looked after the cat, right?
It's sort of like... This is a sequel to Weekend at Bernie's. Weekend at Fluffy's or something.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Marks and Spencer upset everyone, Homer Simpson was censored, and Britain's loneliest sheep was rescued. Thank you to my panel, Cressida Wetton and Josh Howie, and to all of my guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio right here in Paddington, London, be part of the audience, you can do that. Just go to www.sroaudiences.com. That website address is on the screen right now. Just apply there and come along and join us. Stay tuned for the Dinosaur Hour. That's the brilliant new show hosted by comedy legend John Cleese. And on tonight's show, he's interviewing Stephen Fry. That's just after the break. And don't forget, Headliners is on later at 11 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Bork, using the GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There are a few showers to watch out throughout this bonfire night, particularly for western areas. They could be still heavy at times, pushing their way in across particularly northwest England, western Wales, through the Bristol Channel as well. Western areas of Scotland not escaping either. Into the second half of the night, we could just see a few beginning to skirt their way into Sussex and Kent, but a lot of other eastern areas will remain largely dry with some clear intervals. Underneath that, some mist and fog possible. It will also turn relatively chilly, particularly so for eastern Scotland, where we can expect some frost. So quite a chilly start to the new working week here. But as we head into Monday, it is a day of sunshine and showers for many. Those showers most frequent in the west once again, perhaps a few rumbles of thunder, maybe some hail in those heaviest ones as well. Into the afternoon, just starting to see those showers progress into eastern areas of England, but still with a good amount of sunshine in between them. Temperatures around 10 to 13 degrees Celsius, so fairly pleasant if you are in those sunnier spots. For Tuesday, it will again start relatively showery, but we've got this ridge of high pressure that's going to be moving its way in during the day. That will gradually help to ease off the showers, particularly for western areas as we head into the afternoon. So turning drier here, again, some sunny intervals to watch out for and enjoy if you are out and about. The winds also easing off throughout the day as well. As we head into Wednesday, there is a more persistent band of rain that will be sweeping its way across the UK. And then into Thursday, the showers return once again. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News. Knock again.
Hello? 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 Who is it? We're here.